Hi, my name is Steve Gallagher, and I'm the president of Pure Life Ministries. I want to welcome you to our new video series, 20 Truths That Helped Me in My Battle with Porn Addiction. So here is truth number 1. If you are addicted to pornography and sexual sin, I want you to know that there is a way out. Listen, in my 30-plus years of ministering to sexual addicts, I have witnessed countless men find freedom. If you're anything like I once was, you're probably pretty skeptical about that kind of a claim. In fact, my guess is you've heard those promises in the past only to be disappointed by the shallow answers you received. So I want to start off this series by sharing my own story with you. And please believe me when I tell you that I am not proud of my story. Much of it is very shameful to me, but I share it because I want you to walk away from this video with the very real feeling that if that guy can get free, anyone can. I was raised in Sacramento in an unhappy, dysfunctional home. Most of the problems in our home were because my father was a wicked man. And from my earliest days, I took after him in nearly every way. I was one of those kids who was always in trouble, always in the principal's office, always getting suspended from school. Like my dad, I have an intense personality, so whatever I was into in life, I was into it with all my heart. So when I started using drugs as a young teenager, I went all in. In fact, I was already shooting heroin by the time I was 16. By the time I was 18, I came right to the edge of death by overdose twice. I had 3 bad trips on LSD. I was in a stolen car that was rolled. I was only arrested 3 times, but I had countless brushes with the law. I also ripped off countless people and seduced countless girls. This reckless lifestyle really took its toll on me. I had been arrested for cultivating marijuana and was sentenced to 1 month of work project, sort of a teenage chain gang. As that sentence was coming to an end, a friend of mine told me that he got saved and invited me to a revival meeting. So I went with him the very next night and gave my heart to the Lord. I quit taking drugs and quit running around with girls right away, but I couldn't seem to shake my habit of masturbation. I finally gave up the fight after about a year and totally backslid. I never returned to that life of drugs and crime again, but I gave myself over to chasing girls like never before. It was the same basic story every time. I'd get involved with a girl, make her feel like she was the most important person in the world to me, but once I got what I wanted, I was off to the next one. This infatuation with sex took a dramatic turn when I turned 21 and discovered hardcore pornography in an adult bookstore. I continued my womanizing, but I actually became more addicted to those pornographic videos than to the real thing. I lived for pornography and I never seemed to get enough of it. I was always looking for that special girl or that special scene in those movies. But even when I found it, I soon tired of it and was back looking again. The satisfaction it offered was empty and short-lived. This pursuit of sex made up my life over the next number of years. When I was 25, I met a decent and easygoing girl named Kathy Irwin. We were soon married, and not long after that, I joined the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. After I graduated from the academy, I was assigned to a maximum security jail facility in Los Angeles. My aggressive personality landed me on the response team that would rush into disturbances there in the jail. But as much as I loved the excitement of the job, my lust for sexual sin was the thing that really drove me in life. Since I was married, I couldn't date girls anymore, so I started sneaking around to visit prostitutes and go to massage parlors. This didn't bring any more satisfaction than the pornography, though. You would think that the more you get what you want, the more fulfilled you would be as a person, but actually just the opposite is true. The more you give over to sin, the emptier you become. It's as if a giant cavern is carved out of your inner being. You constantly try to fill that cavern with pleasure, but that only makes it worse. Not only that, but the more you give over to sin, the more self-centered you become. My world shrank to the point that all I lived for was my beloved sin. There was no room for anyone else in my heart, not even my wife. If you would have encountered me during that time, you probably would have walked away saying something like, "Man, that guy is full of himself," or "What a jerk," or even, "What a creep." Yet Kathy loved me to the point of idolatry, and I instinctively knew that she would do anything to keep me. So one day I confessed to her the secret life I had going, but told her that if we could watch pornographic movies together, I would be satisfied. She reluctantly agreed to it, but of course that only drove me further into my sin. Not long after that, I picked up an underground sex newspaper that had ads for swingers in it. I started pressuring her to get involved, and eventually she even agreed to this. My obsession with sex drove me into such insanity that I was actually allowing other men to have their way with my wife. By this point, God had really given me over to my sin, and I was becoming increasingly more ugly and violent. My life was careening out of control. In 1982, Kathy finally got to where she couldn't take anymore, and she left me. For the next several weeks, I started going out with women again. But it wasn't long before I was so miserable and full of despair that I couldn't imagine going on in life. One day, I put my off-duty revolver to my head, ready to end it all. I went through a terrible 6-hour ordeal of mental torment that day. Jesus described hell as being a place of outer darkness where people are weeping and wailing and gnashing their teeth. I experienced that kind of intense anguish that day. That 6-hour experience left me shattered as a man, but God used it to bring me back into fellowship with him. But I had dug myself into a very deep pit, and it would take 2.5 years of struggling with sexual addiction before I got free. More importantly, the Lord began disassembling the enormous structure of self that I had erected within. I was so conditioned to only think of myself that I could hardly comprehend doing anything nice to someone else. A few months after that 6-hour experience, an inmate told me that God had showed him that I would be going into full-time ministry. I was skeptical, but over the following weeks, that word was confirmed over and over to me. So I quit the sheriff's department in 1983, and Kathy and I moved back to Sacramento to attend a Bible school there. Now the Lord really began to deal with me. He had to plunge the scalpel deep to carve the poison of sin out of my heart. Time and again, I experienced episodes of heart-wrenching repentance. It was extremely difficult, but as far as I was concerned, there were no other options. I was desperate to be free. Throughout this period, the Lord began teaching me principles about how to get the victory over sexual addiction. And that's what I want to share with you in this series. Some of those important principles that God used to utterly transform my life. So I invite you to watch these videos and put into practice the things that led me and so many others into a life of victory. Just keep in mind that a few 10-minute videos cannot adequately explain all that is involved in coming into a victorious life. But I think you'll get enough of a taste of truth in these talks to make you hungry for more. So let's get started by looking at the liar who has been whispering in your ear. If you watch this video and you're ready to begin walking the path of freedom from porn addiction, then you don't have to wait another week. The next video in this series is already available. It's called Sexual Sin is a Liar, and it's located in our video library. My prayer for you is that as you begin going through this series, you'll find hope welling up inside you that you truly can come into the victorious life God has for you. I encourage you to get started right away.